Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Made in Bartlett, a program that takes a hard look at the primary movers and shakers in the Bartlett area. We want to thank our underwriter, First South Financial, for making this podcast possible. We also want to mention V2 Media, who's a producer in making this podcast possible. So thank you both for First South Financial and V2 Media. We are joined today with Dr. David Stevens, Superintendent of Bartlett City Schools. Hello, David.
John, good to be here. Good to see you.
Thank you for coming in this hot day.
It is a warm day.
Yeah, it's a warm day.
We dressed appropriately.
Yes, we did. David, I've known you for quite some time, I guess ever since you've taken the helm at Bartlett City Schools. But I remember also the turbulence involved in developing the school system. But at first, you had the merger of the Memphis City Schools and Shelby County Schools and all that. We want to delve into a little bit of that and how Bartlett City Schools came about. But first, David, let's talk a little bit about you, about your background, about how you got into administration, because I know that when you get into teaching, you don't automatically go into administration. At least I don't think you do. I mean, some people might, but that wasn't your route. You taught, right? You coached.
I did.
You did a lot of different things. So could you just give us kind of a little...
Well, yeah, I mean, John, growing up, I came from a family of educators. There were 13 of my family members worked for either Memphis City or Shelby County Schools. My dad, his sister, his brother, his dad, my sister, the whole family. I mean, like I said, there were 13 of us. I was the last one, and I'm excited to say that my daughter graduated from Christian Brothers University and is going to be a special education teacher. So she is carrying on the family legacy.
Is she the golfer?
She is the golfer.
Okay.
Yeah. So she will be the 14th member of our family that have been school teachers. And I tell the story. I remember my mom, she wasn't a school teacher. Then she would say at Christmas, we would get together and have a family get together, and everybody would be there. And she said she felt like she was sitting in a faculty meeting because everybody was sitting talking about school. So,
yeah, I can see.
That's the direction I went. But when I went to college, I kind of had it in my head that I'm not going to be a teacher. I've been around teachers my whole life. I want to go in the business world. I'm going to go, make $1 million and do that. But as I started through the University of Memphis and I started in those business classes, I found out something that I really didn't like those classes. So I ended up in education, and I was going to be the next John Calipari or the next Penny Hardaway coach. And I wanted to be a basketball coach. And I did that for, I think, 12 years. I coached and taught school.
Where did you coach?
Houston. I started at Snowden Junior High School in like 1986.
Really? That's where I went to school.
And I thought I knew I was a good coach, but I had two kids that were, a lot of kids that were really good players, but one was LaMarcus Golden that ended up playing at the University of Tennessee, and then Chris Garner, who was the point guard at the University of Memphis and had a stint in the NBA with the Toronto Raptors. So as a young kid out of college, coaching, I thought I had it figured out. Well, I found out real soon players make coaches. Coaches don't make players. So I had that opportunity. Then I went to Houston High School, and I coached there. But then I started a family, had my son, and it was like, well, it's really hard to raise a family now and coaching and teaching. So I ended up going back to school, getting my master's degree, getting in administration. I started out at Millington Central High School, and I was 2 years there as assistant principal and then 4 years as a vice principal. And those were some really, really good years of really getting in and learning instructional program. Those years as vice principal, I worked with Nancy Norwood. She was a first-year principal, and I was a first-year vice principal. And so we kind of were learning together, and it was almost kind of like, she used to kid and say, it's kind of like a co-principalship between the two of us. And then I had the opportunity to go to Bolton and be the principal of Bolton, and I was there for 5 years, and those were some great years, learned really a lot. And I think of all the things that I've gone through career-wise to prepare me to be a superintendent. That was not my goal. I was not like preparing to be a superintendent, but then John Atkin became superintendent of Shelby County Schools, and he had me come down to the Board of Education as assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction. and I accepted that job. And I tell people I had the greatest job in the area for 6 months because the first 6 months was great. And then on December 20th or 21st is when Memphis City Schools voted to
Oh my goodness.
to drop their charter. So I started July 1st and made it through December, and then the whole world went upside down. But it was I think back of my career, it's hard to believe this is like my 38th, going into 39th year in education. The changes that I've seen, lots of changes, and all the people. And I think of all those people that I've worked for, worked with, and the impact that they have had on me. Because one thing you'll find with educators, people get in education because they want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing I think about, Jim Mitchell, who was superintendent of the previous Shelby County schools, back to Jim Anderson, John Atkin I worked with, so many other principals and administrators and teachers, just a group of really good people that cared about young people and wanted to make a difference. And that really had an impact on me. And then when municipals showed up,
let's talk about that.
we'll get.
But I want to ask you. I'm just curious. Okay, you were a faculty member. You were a teacher. You were coaching. Then you went to graduate school, got your master's. How do you make that leap from teaching to administration?
It was different. It was really good that I went from Houston High School to Millington, because at Houston High School I was known as Coach Stevens, and I was the basketball coach. When I went to Millington at the time, I hadn't received my doctorate yet, so I was Mr. Stevens. So I was able to kind of go and reinvent myself. And the thing about it, administration, there's so much to it, and I really delved into the instructional side of it. What happens in the classroom? Because the greatest interaction is between that young student and that teacher.
Right.
That daily interaction. Well, how can we help teachers improve? How can we help teachers have a greater impact? So I really looked at that when I was at Millington, because I noticed, Millington was a different community than Houston. But the thing I noticed, the kids were pretty much the same. The only difference I saw was there was probably a lot more parental involvement in the Houston, Germantown community, where they wanted their kids in the AP classes. They wanted them in the honors programs, where at Millington, the parents were like, it's okay if they want out of the AP class or not. And I kept saying, no, you're a really bright kid. You're going to do well. This is going to help your ACT. This can really change your trajectory as it goes towards getting scholarships. But I saw those kids that were really bright, sharp kids, and they just needed some adults in their life to help push them and get them going in the right direction. So I really focused in on trying to change from being a coach. Now, the coaching really helped me a lot with dealing with people and leadership. And I think that I've seen now through my years is of assistant principals and district administrators that have coached. They're usually good at motivating people, and motivators, they can
And dealing with people.
and dealing with people,
Like
right? And
parents.
when you're trying to get a 14 or 15-year-old kid to do something they really don't want to do, and they want to catch it and shoot it every time, but you want them to pass it to the kid that's open and get them to convince to do that and show up every day and work hard. It does take a skill set, but I do think that those things really helped me in being able to go to Millington and kind of reinvent myself from a coach to an instructional leader, because I really think that because at that point, someday I said, I probably want to be a principal, and I thought that was going to be it. So I wanted to really be able to help the instructional program, help teachers, help kids, because that's what it comes down to. Because as an administrator, my job is to support and make sure things are orderly, teachers have what they need, kids have what they need, and that things are going to head in the proper direction. So, because I always tell people, the most important job a principal does is hire, retain, and grow great teachers.
Yeah.
You got to find the best people you can find. And as any organization or any business, you got to be able to keep them, because and especially in today's economy and market, there's people that are always looking for something bigger and better and greater. But then the ones who maybe are struggling a little bit or are new at it, you got to help them grow. So if you can hire, retain, and grow those people, it really, really helps. And it makes what happens in that classroom be more impactful. And that's what we did. But it was kind of like a situation, like I said, I started a family, I was coaching, I was spending all my time with everybody else's kids. My wife at the time was working at the Bank of Bartlett, and she wanted to be a stay-home mom. So she was able to work part-time a couple days a week, and grandparents would help watch the kids. And then I said, well, financially, on teaching salary, coaching salary, it was just really hard to raise a family, especially back in those days. It's gotten better today, but it's probably not where it needs to be or should be. But once I got into the administrative role, I really realized how much I enjoyed working with teachers and helping teachers, especially new teachers that came in. It was 2 days ago, I believe, I went in and talked to a brand new group of teachers that are coming to Bartlett City Schools. And I used to tell them, well, when I was an administrator, I always had a box of Kleenex on my desk, because when October got there, the newness had wore off, and they would come in my office and they would, like, I don't think I can do this. And I told them I used to do the same thing. I used to tell the story when I first started teaching my first year. I go to church and do that. But then I was going Wednesday night. I was going Sunday morning. I was going Sunday night. And I was saying, Lord, I don't think I can go face him tomorrow. But then after 6 months and you kind of learn and figure it out, then you kind of say, okay, I can do this. But, teaching is so different. John, I'm sure, like if you're work for a chamber of commerce or something, at first, they just don't hand you the keys and say, go do it. You're probably with somebody and they kind of show you the ropes. Or if you're in sales or marketing or whatever it is, you're kind of paired with someone. Well, teachers, we hand them the keys. And back in my day, they hand me keys and some chalk and said, go get it.
Really?
Well, nowadays, they may have a laptop and that, but you go in and you're expected to do that first day what a 30-year vet does, because you have those kids and you're in there by yourself. So it is kind of a culture shock for new teachers, but I really enjoyed helping new teachers. And then you see them at the end of the year where they're excited, their kids are learning, they figured out a lot of things, they figured out what worked, what didn't work. So that's kind of been, my road in administration. And I didn't know how much I was going to like it, because sometimes you have to deal with the discipline and all those other things. But I really delved into and said, well, if I can make the teacher the best they can be, those other things will take care of themselves. Because if you have a great teacher in the classroom, you usually don't have those discipline problems and those other issues.
And now you're a superintendent of one of the largest school systems in the state.
Yeah, I think we're probably out of 100 and, I don't know, is there 47, 48? We're probably the 18th largest school district.
Yeah.
We got 11 schools and 9,000 kids, and it's kind of nice in June. It's a little bit quieter, but when August gets here, it will be, I tell people, when you have about 2,000 employees and 9,000 kids, there's always room for excitement.
Yeah, there is. Well, I want to get into your tenure with Bartlett City Schools, but first, let's talk about how this all came about, because now, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but starting school systems are not something that happens every day. In fact, I would assume that this is an assumption on my part, and that could be way off, but there had not been a new school system created in Tennessee for decades, probably.
About 40-something years, I think.
Okay. So, and you started in on that path about the dissolution of the Memphis City school system, and we don't have to go into great detail on that, but I always heard it as being the nuclear option that one of the Memphis City Council people threw in and caused, Memphis City schools to dissolve. Now, there's a lot of politics and a lot of financial aspects to that too, I believe, because Memphis was trying to get out from under this mandate that they had to pay so much into the school system. And I believe by dissolving the school system, they eliminated that. Is that somewhat correct?
Yeah, that was part of it. Okay. It was a very complicated situation.
Yeah. But anyway, so in state law, and again, correct me, Dave, if I'm wrong, but in state law, the county is responsible for education, not a municipality, not a city. So Shelby County school system was the official school system of Shelby County. And then Memphis, 100 years ago or so, decided, they want to go it alone and have their own school system. Is that pretty much correct?
That's it.
So Memphis had their own school system, but Shelby County schools had the rest. So I'll let you take it up from there.
Yeah. So the merger process started, like I said, I believe it was on December 21st. And at first, everybody was like, this isn't going to happen. And it was very interesting because we talked to a lot of my colleagues from Memphis City schools and Shelby County schools, and none of us wanted it. We all felt, our school systems, we were doing the right thing. We were doing the best we could. But once we saw that this was going to happen, at the time I was an assistant superintendent. Then eventually I was moved up to John Atkins chief of staff. And then once it was merged, I became the deputy superintendent. So I was kind of in the forefront, and I was part of the group that was tasked with putting the two systems together. If you remember, there was a kind of an appointed body of citizens that was kind of a politically appointed body called the Transition Planning Commission. They came out with, I believe, 172 or some odd recommendations of things you have to do to put two large organizations together. Well, you had one district with about 100 and, close to 50,000 kids, and one with 50,000. You were creating the 17th largest school district in the country. You had a lot more than 172 things you had to figure out. So we put together what was called a transition steering committee, and I was part of that group. It was 4 members of Shelby County schools and 3 members of Memphis City schools, and we sat in a room for hours, and we looked at everything from nutrition to payroll to benefits to buses to maintenance to custodial to textbook. I mean, you name every facet of that organization, and we had to harmonize that. Because a lot of times each district was doing something different, and we had to figure out, well, which one are we going to use and do? So once there was an election, they elected school board members, and the federal judge overturned that election and said, no, this legislation, the Norris-Todd Act, only impacts Shelby County. You can't have state law that just impacts one place. Kind of, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So this was the moratorium, because at the time there was a moratorium on creating special school districts, municipal school districts. You couldn't create them. Norris-Todd Act created it, but it was the federal judge interpreted, well, it was only created to impact Shelby County. You couldn't have done it in Knox County or Hamilton County or Davidson County.
And this is what, at the time, senior senator leader.
Right. Senator Norris, who is Judge Norris now, and Curry Todd, who was state representative. So once that was overturned, those elections, we were like, oh boy, there's not going to be municipal schools. And we were dedicated to make this thing work, but we really put it into warp speed to make it work. And that's one thing I'll say. Everybody that was part of the school districts, we were committed to making Memphis Shelby County schools be successful. And that was from John Atkin, who was superintendent. At the same time, you had Kreiner Cash, who was the Memphis superintendent. But all of our staff, we got together and really worked hard. Well, eventually they fixed the legislation where it wasn't just for Shelby County. It could go to other. It passed the judicial test, and then municipal started. So at the time, I was deputy superintendent. John Atkin had left. Kreiner Cash had left. Dorsey Hobson, who was the attorney for Memphis City Schools, became superintendent. He asked me to be his deputy superintendent. And he said, at the time, he said, David, I want you to stay in this job as long as you want to do this job. So I was there for about a year, and that was very interesting, being kind of the number 2 in this big merged district. Learned a lot.
How long did that last? Less than 2 years.
What is that?
The merger.
Well, yeah, it was about 2 years. I think it was 2 years.
Yeah.
I think we had 2 years. And then municipal started. And technically, though, it still merged, because there are schools in unincorporated Shelby County that now are part of Memphis Shelby. Yep. Yeah, Bolton is one. You have Barrett's Chapel, some of those schools. So when
but creating the municipal school systems, that was not falling off a log. That was tough going
too.
The
advantage that I had was I was at the epicenter of merging them. So I really got a crash course in how payroll works, how transportation, how every aspect of the school district, because we were studying that, looking at how. So when we were putting them together, when we started, I had that frame of reference of putting those together. So I knew, okay, transportation, we vetted 2 different ways of doing it. Here's what's going to work best for Bartlett. Here's how we're going to do custodial. Here's how we're going to do our operations team as far as having HVAC mechanics. Are we going to outsource that, or are we going to hire our own people? So I had done a lot of that work. We looked at budgets. We looked at finance. And the other advantage I had is I knew people that were experts in some of these areas. And early on, I was able to hire them. Teresa Winter, our chief financial officer, who is retiring this year, who's been with us for 12 years, was a valuable asset. She was the finance director in Old Shelby and in the merged district, and really understood school financing, governmental finance, and was super, super important. And then we brought in James Aldinger, who was our HR person, because we knew those are the first 2 people that we brought in, because we knew we were going to have to hire people. We knew we were going to have to make sure the finances were in line.
But when the law came into effect, when Norris was finally able to get that law passed, had all the municipalities in suburban Shelby County already agreed to and were already beginning the structure of a new school system?
And I think, yes, they were doing some work, but that work may not have been, because it was done by lay people that weren't school people, some of that early work and policy.
Well, a lot of the momentum started from the lay
It was
people.
definitely from that, what was it, Better Bartlett Schools, that grassroots organization. It was so interesting because I was on the other side really watching it and being someone who lived in Bartlett, and I knew Bartlett, we were uniquely positioned because Bartlett really needed a focus. And what we have now in the old school system, you had a superintendent that was focusing in on, I believe we had 8 high schools. Well, now you have a superintendent that's focusing in on 1. Well, you had board members that were focusing in on all their different areas. So the folks from Germantown were focusing in on Germantown. The folks from Colleyville. Well, now you have a school board, a mayor and board of aldermen, a superintendent, a district that are focusing on a set of 11 schools and 1 high school. So we were able to do things that we never would have been able to do in the old Shelby County school system.
Right.
Because back then, if you did for 1 high school, you had to do it for all the other 8 or 7. Well, now if you do it for 1, you've done it for the 1. So that was good. But the thing that really helped me was being able to understand that, being able to get the right team in place. And then after going through the merger and then the demerger, now building Bartlett City Schools. And I look back now, and after 12 years, it's just kind of like, oh my goodness, so much has been accomplished. A lot of really good things have happened. I think it's really, really energized the city, and it's really helped the city, because people say, John, being in the chamber, when people come, they want to know how safe is it and what are your schools like?
Yeah.
And I think Bartlett right now, we can definitely check those 2 off, and we can go to everything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when the whole process was beginning, and there was a lot of debate. I mean, there were some people in Bartlett that wanted the old system. They wanted another type of Shelby County school.
Or are you going to be able to afford it? Or are you going to bankrupt the city? That was the other.
That was a hotly debated. And my argument was, look, folks, that's one of the greatest assets Bartlett could have is its own school system. And kudos to you and your team for putting this together, because, under your leadership, it happened. So I want to get into a little bit about the Bartlett City Schools, what you did when you first came in, because again, all these schools were under the Shelby County school system, and then the merger, and then how you decided which schools were going to be in Bartlett, because I guess everyone they were physically in Bartlett.
If they were in the city limits, they were ours.
Okay. Now, funding for this, and before we get into the details about creating the school system, let the viewers know that funding for schools in Shelby County is dependent on the county.
It is county and state. 98% of our funding comes from county property tax, state, and sales tax.
Right.
And so the city probably kicks in about maybe 1%, 2% of that.
So So the money in the county is responsible for funding the public school system, and the money follows the student.
Follows the kid, average daily attendance. So how many are in average daily membership? How many kids you have? The dollars follow the kids.
So with Bartlett forming its own school system, it already had a guarantee. Hey, we're going to get this amount of money from the county.
Exactly.
And Germantown, same way, and Memphis City Schools, same way. So okay, so you got that. Now you're forming the school system. God almighty, David, it just seemed like to me all the variables involved and all of that, and just,
I don't know if I'd want to do it again. But once was probably enough. That's once in your career. And I think a lot of us that were other superintendents that were involved that said, we're glad we did it, but I don't think we'd want to do it again because it was a lot. But, and I credit Jim Mitchell too, previous superintendent. He did a feasibility study, and he basically said, if you do this, this, and this, you can do it, and you can do it cost effectively. And one of the things he said, he goes, hire the right people and hire people that have been in this business locally. And I think that's what all the municipals did, pretty much. And all of us have been very successful, and we've been able to do it fiscally responsible. We haven't bankrupt our city, and we've been able to do a lot of really neat things, such as the renovation of Bartlett High School.
Well, I want to talk about that too, but what's unique about suburban Shelby County, folks, is that you've got 3 cities inside suburban Shelby County with a population of over 40,000 people. Bartlett's almost 60,000. Then you got Lakeland, Arlington, and Millington, and they're all 3 growing. So I think the critical mass was there to support the school system.
And the thing too, if you went around anywhere and you asked them, said, okay, you got this city. It's the 10th, 11th largest city in the state of Tennessee. It has hospital, fire, police, everything. But there is a law that says they can't have their own schools.
Exactly.
Most people would have said, that's not right. They ought to be able to have their own schools. So I'm so glad. And in the city fathers from Mayor McDonald and even previous administrations have always wanted to have their own municipal schools.
Yeah, and rightly so.
Rightly so.
So, okay, so you inherited you created a new school system. You inherited these schools, 9 schools. Is that right?
11
schools. And then you had the big one that was probably the biggest sore thumb you could possibly have, and that was Bartlett High School.
Yeah, I remember Phil Clark coming to me, and Phil passed away last year, and just great coach, and he was a athletic director, and he came in, I'll never forget, he said, boss, we're so far behind. I said, what are you talking about? He said, facilities. So I want you to walk with me. So we went and we walked all the back parts of Bartlett High School. And I was like, oh my goodness, because what in the old Shelby days, as Bartlett grew, there was an elementary school on the campus. They just turned it into part of the campus. They needed another building. There was a piece of ground. They just built a building. So you had all these separate buildings that weren't attached. It was a safety and security nightmare. You had an auditorium that was built in 1917. Another building was built in 1952. Another building was built in 1963, one in 78. None of it mattered. So we said, we need to make this school, because every student in Bartlett City Schools will go to Bartlett High School. We need to make this a school that everybody in the community can be proud of. So we got and sat with Scott Fleming of Fleming Architectural and Michael Winter with that firm. And we probably worked a year and a half on many, many different ideas. Build a new school somewhere else. Look at different parts of the city. Could we, even across the street where the senior center is, could we look at Boyd Lane? Could we maybe buy that up and build it? And so we finally came in with the idea of doing this major renovation. And I will tell you, the thing that we wanted to do is when people walked in, we didn't want them to go, oh, this is nice. We wanted them to go and go, oh, wow. And every time somebody that has walked in that building that had knew what it looked like before, and they said, this is unbelievable. Yeah, I can't believe this is the same building. I mean, it met and beat all of my expectations, because I used to tell Scott Fleming, like, Scott, are you sure this is going to look like this? This is what it's going to. And he's like, we can do this. So they connected every building. We built new athletic facilities, classrooms, art classrooms, career technical classrooms, gymnasiums. And it is one of the nicest buildings. In fact, Hubie Smith, who was the old basketball coach from many years ago, came back and toured it last year. And he goes, I can't believe it. He goes, I've seen, and I live in Nashville now, and I've seen some of the brand new schools they built in Nashville. they don't rival this, what you've done. So that's probably the thing I'm most proud of. And I'm looking really forward to the next future down the road of what things that we can do in Bartlett, because it's.
Well, it is a showpiece, the Bartlett High School. It really is. And I think it impresses everybody who walks through those doors. And real quickly, David, I know we're running short of time, but you've been a very strong proponent of the CTE program that the school offers. And a lot of our viewers may not really know what the CTE is. And if you could just real quickly jump into that.
Career technical education is not the same as it used to be. When we went there, we had an old welding shop, and it was kind of greasy, grimy, and they were building duck blinds and wrought iron fences, and that's great. I'm an old duck hunter, and I enjoy that. But now we moved into advanced manufacturing, CNC milling, where those kids are in now in a clean room, air-conditioned environment. Kids are leaving Bartlett High School, going right over to a lot of our businesses in Bartlett, making a great salary, going to TCAT, getting continued training. So we've really tried to revamp the technology of career technical education. Has really changed. And we've said, yeah, college is for a lot of kids, but there are other kids that college, and it's really the paradigm is shifting of more kids going into
a skill set.
And they can make a great living, do it right here in Bartlett. And we are really of staying on top of what are those next things that we need our kids to do. And we're constantly changing those type of programs to meet the needs of the Bartlett community and how technology and all of that is changing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, David, we're running out of time. We're out of time, actually. We're over. And, I know that
you warned me at the beginning. John said he can talk a lot, but it ended up being me this time.
Well, I let you ramble. So you did a great job, too, by the way. And I know that there's more we could talk about. AI is one thing I wanted to talk about. I had a lunch with a professor of the University of Memphis. We were talking a little bit about that. That's kind of a scary deal.
And it is here, and it is not going anywhere.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
So anyway, David, thank you so much for allowing us to interview you, to be coming on the podcast. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching. Thank you, First South Financial, for underwriting this program, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks.